All right, let's see what's going on here. Check 1, check 2. Do I have anybody on the stream yet? All right, looks like we're coming up here. Trying something a little bit different tonight. Oh yeah, interesting. That looks like it's... Hey, Frank, how are you, my friend? Happy Sunday. CWAY 44, hello. Just gonna chill here for a minute or two and see if there's Oregon Mike. All right, I thought I was gonna be solo here, man. I'm glad you showed up, Oregon Mike. Yeah, man, I had a good weekend. Got caught up on some chores, getting some new stuff set up here. Travis, how are you, my friend? Good to see you. Let's see. How's the lighting in here? Looks like it might be a little bit dark, huh? Not really sure why that is. All right, I see Dana Barish, Doug Carr, Mojave Mike. Hello from Utah. Good. Rich Patton's on. Simcoe Backcountry. Carol Limbach. DMR dude. Angie Jensen. Awesome. Dirt Bandit. How's it going, my friend? Does the stream look really... Oh, yeah. Okay. So Oregon Mike's saying it's a touch dark. So I'm messing around with a new program here, you guys. So this is I've got an actual streaming software going on here. So hopefully you guys bear with me a little bit. This is a kind of an experiment, and I'm not sure why, but up until just now, the color and everything looked fine. So obviously now that I'm live, it's going to go haywire on us. So I'll see what I can do to tune it up here really quick. Filters. Let's see if I can't brighten it up just a little bit. I don't want to go too much. Wow, that does look really dark, doesn't it? Okay, sorry about that, guys. Having technical difficulties, but I appreciate you bearing with me while I get it sorted out. So, all right. Sarah, how's it going? What's up? Lummox Overland Adventures, good to see you. Diane Britson, Brad Doris. Wow, see some new people on here tonight. This is pretty cool, man. Maybe the daylight savings time had the opposite effect. I thought maybe with daylight savings time we were going to have a lot fewer people on here, but it looks like we got a pretty good crowd, man. Wolf H, how's it going? Uh-oh, now somebody's saying the wall is blown out. I'm assuming they mean the wall behind me is really bright, so... All right, you guys, Robert Burke from the coast, Jacqueline, there you are, Michael Neal. Okay, so we're going to get started here, guys, and I'm going to ask you, please just have a little bit of patience. So I got set up a little bit differently. I've got an actual streaming software application. I've been playing with it all day long, trying to get it dialed in right, and hopefully everything's going to go really good tonight. I've got another little piece of history that I want to tell you guys about that involves bandits and some lost gold and some things like that. And hopefully what I'm going to be able to do tonight is I'm going to be able to actually show you guys some stuff that goes along with it. So let's just take a quick little peek here and see what we have going on. I'm hoping to be able to switch back and forth to maps and things like that. So... looks like that functionality is working good. All right, let's go back to this. Okay. All right, guys. So a couple of business items. Just right out of the gate, first of all, as always, I want to thank everyone for the PayPal contributions. I've got a pretty good list of people who have made PayPal contributions directly that'll be going out in my next video. And then, as always, appreciate the super chat contributions in these live streams, man. And as always, I'll tell you guys again, between the PayPal contributions, the super chats on these live streams, and the merchandise sales through Lolo Overland Adventures. That's pretty much the bulk of the support that keeps my channel going. So let's try something else here really quick. All right. Hopefully you guys noticed I just switched the scene, and now you should be seeing my brother Lolo Overland's logo up there, just above my my other shoulder, just above my shoulder up there. Oh yeah, there it is. Perfect. Everything's looking perfect. All right, guys. Well, what I want to talk to you about tonight is I want to talk to you about a story about some lost gold that I'm going to take a run at seeing if I can find. So last week I talked to you guys about the Blue Bucket gold mine and the whole story and all the chain of events that led up to the Blue Bucket gold being lost out there, or actually the Blue Bucket gold being found and then never being discovered since then. So the Blue Bucket gold is one of the things I want to spend some time kind of digging into this year. But the second one that I want to spend some time digging into, and this one I'm hoping I'll be able to hit a little bit earlier because it's a little closer to home, is another legend of some lost gold. So now this story begins, like I said, a little bit closer to home. This story kind of begins. Well, let me back up a little bit. The story actually begins down in San Francisco with the gold rush in 1849. You've all heard of the San Francisco 49ers and the gold rush of 1849 down in San Francisco. Well, by the late 1850s, early 1860s, there was the opportunities for guys to make money down there in the San Francisco gold fields was really drying up. And about that time, a couple of gold strikes up in Oregon started taking off, and one of them happened to be in a little town called Canyon City, Oregon. That's just about 80 miles or so from where I live, or maybe it's a little more than that, maybe 120 miles or so from where I live. So, where our story begins is with a group of guys who made the trek north from the San Francisco area, the foothills outside of Sacramento, that whole area down there, who made the journey up here. And they made the journey on a trail that was called the Wairika Trail. And basically what they did is they pulled up stakes down in the San Francisco, down in California, and they headed up towards Oregon on the Wairika Trail. Now, at this point, these guys that this story is about did not know each other, right? A good number of them all came from this direction, or at least so the story goes. So, as the prospectors down in California got disgruntled and weren't making enough money, they started heading up towards Oregon. And this particular group of fellas landed in Canyon City somewhere probably right around 1862 or something like that. Now, what happened was there was a rumor of a pretty big gold rush in San Francisco. There was a rumor of a pretty big gold rush in Canyon City, Oregon. But what happened is some of the promoters got a hold of it and kind of blew it out of proportion. And like with a lot of these tales of fortune to be had in the West, the reality wasn't nearly as big and fruitful as the stories were. So, needless to say, a lot of people made the journey up to Canyon City, and by the time a lot of them got to the John Day and Canyon City area, there wasn't necessarily as much gold to be found up there as you might think. So, let's take just a minute here, and I want to show you a little bit about, if any of you guys have been to Canyon City, Oregon recently, it probably looks a lot different. So, when these gentlemen arrived in Canyon City, it looked a little bit like what you're seeing right here in the picture. And then, take it a step further, here's another look up the canyon in Canyon City, and you can kind of see the Ochco Mountains there in the background. But basically, Canyon City was a gold field at that point. So, what happened was, as all these guys arrived in Canyon City and John Day, they started figuring out that that it wasn't going to be quite as easy to find a fortune there as they made out to be. In fact, they got to the camps there in Canyon City and they started figuring out that life was actually pretty darn hard. And to give you guys a little bit of a feel for what things were like there, here's a picture of of a day in the average life of a miner there in the Kenyan City gold fields. Now you can see he's looking pretty bedraggled. His clothes are wore out, and he's working what's called a sluice box right there. Here's a picture of what it might have looked like when they were coming across that Wairika Trail there with all their belongings bundled on the back of some mules. Then here's another picture of some guys working a sluice box. And then another one right here. So this is a little bit of kind of what life looked like up there at the time that all these gentlemen that this story centers around are going to arrive. So they arrived in Kenyan City, and they found a place to put up their tent, and they staked a couple of mining claims, and a couple of the guys had claims. And basically what happened was you just had to find somewhere up there, you just had to kind of find a patch of dirt that somebody hadn't already staked a claim on and go to work. So a lot of times the patch of dirt that the guys staked when they staked a claim was, could have only been a few yards wide by a few yards wide, and they were working down in the deposits. If they were lucky, they got into some hard rock claims up in the hills where they were able to start blasting tunnels in. But to make a long story short, these guys started putting in a little bit of work and quickly found out that they were going to have a really tough time making any money in these gold fields. So they spent about a year or so working hard, brutal, and barely getting anything out of it. So what happened was, at first there were about 3 of them that knew each other. They had claims all in the general vicinity, and then they were downtown one day, and they ran into another guy who in the tavern downtown, and they started talking, and they came up with a plan to make a plan that they thought would be a little easier path towards making a living down there. So now, unfortunately, their plan was a little bit nefarious, but basically what they decided to do was they decided to get together, this group of 6 guys. They decided to get together, and what they were going to do is, instead of working hard and mining their own gold, they were just going to go around and rob a couple of the sluice boxes of a couple of other people. Now, for those of you that aren't really familiar with how a sluice box works, basically what happens with a sluice box is they shovel or bucket loads of material in this sluice box, and they basically run water over it, and there's some kind of a system of riffles inside the sluice box. And because the gold's heavy, the gold weighs down and gets caught in the riffles, and in some cases they had some screen and maybe even some fabric in the bottom of the sluice box to catch the gold dust. So what happened was, all day long these miners would be shoveling material into sluice boxes and running water down it, and then at the end of the day, or at some point in the middle of the day, they'd clean out the sluice box and they'd pull all the gold out of it. So what these guys decided to do, that this story centers around, is they decided that instead of mining their own gold, they were just going to go around and rob the sluice boxes of a couple of these other miners. So they all gathered up, and remember there were 6 of them, so they all gathered up, but all the miners that they were going to rob were a tough breed, so they needed 6 of them to be able to make sure that they could overcome the guys that they were trying to rob, or that they were going to try to rob. So basically, they got all together. They got horses, they got saddles, they got saddlebags, they got all the gear. And then finally, the day rolled around that they decided they were going to make this blitz and rob a bunch of these sluice boxes. So what happens is they had to hit them hard and fast. So they waited until towards the end of the workday, because that's when there was going to be the most gold in the sluice boxes. So towards the end of the day, they got on their horses, they rode around the corner and rode up on the first sluice box. And basically, they just rode up, they held the miners at gunpoint that were working there, and they demanded their gold. And they got actually a decent little amount of gold. So they repeated this process about 3 or 4 more times, but they couldn't do it for too long because the word started spreading around. So they got to about the 4th or so sluice box, maybe the 5th sluice box, something like that. And they decided that they'd better get moving, that they didn't want their luck to run out. So at this point, they had a pretty decent little haul of gold. bags of, some speculate that it was mostly bags of gold dust or, fine gold that came out of those sluice boxes. There might have been some nuggets in there, but by all accounts, at least based on the reports of the people who got robbed. Now here we go. Here we are at a point in the story where we have a piece of information that we're pretty sure is true. And as is often the case with a lot of these legends, you have some parts of it that you know are true, and then some parts of it that have just been passed on, and there's very little evidence to really know. But one thing we do know at this point in the story is that there were miners who got robbed of the material that was in their sluice boxes there. So so we know that much to be the case. So at this point, the robbers have a pretty decent little amount of gold that they've robbed off of these miners. So they throw it all in their saddlebags and they start riding. Let me see if I can show you guys here. Just take a moment because this is kind of interesting to see here. So hopefully you guys can see a map on my screen now. And basically what you're looking at right here as you're looking at the area where these 6 guys robbed all of the sluice boxes there. So you can see in this image right here, hopefully that's on your screen, you can see the Great Northern Mine. You can see down here the Golden West Mine, Little Canyon Mountain, Quartz Gulch. This was the whole area that gold rush happened in. And I'll zoom out just a little bit and you can see just to the northwest of that is the town of Canyon City. So right there's Canyon City, you guys can see on the map. And then at the lower right side of the screen, you can start to see all those mine prospects in there, right? And you see this gulch that's moving right here to the center of the screen that says Marysville Placer. So that's just the name of one of the gold-bearing gulches there. And you can see all of those little X's and Y's are symbols for diggings and tunnels and adits and things like that from the mines. So where we're at this point is those guys have raced through all of those mining camps down there on the lower kind of right side of the screen, robbed all these sluice boxes, and now they're going to head out. And probably where they want to ultimately get to is they want to get over the Cascade Mountains and they want to get up to the Willamette Valley somehow. But where they are, out here, John Day, Oregon, you can see is the center of the screen up there. So basically what happens is they start riding. They start riding to the west, following basically what is now Highway 26 going to the west. They're going to go through the towns of Mount Vernon, and then ultimately they're going to get on down the road and they're going to get to a place called Dayville, Oregon. Let's see if we can find that. I don't know my... All right, so you guys can see that right there. That's Dayville, Oregon. So Dayville, Oregon's a couple of dozen miles to the east of Canyon City. So while these guys had some pretty decent little bags full of gold, they didn't quite have as much as they wanted. So basically what they did is they decided to hit the bank in Dayville, Oregon on their way out. So they rode into town. At this point, it was getting to be towards the end of the day. They rode into town, into Dayville, and they robbed the bank in Dayville, getting another pretty sizable amount of gold. So by this time, back in Canyon City, there was a pretty good posse that was rallied to go after them. So as they hit and the posse was heading out of Canyon City, John Day, likely following their tracks, and it was a pretty good-sized group of men. So after they robbed the bank in Dayville, they continued to ride east. And basically what they did is they decided to head for the Ochco Mountains. And I'm going to show you guys exactly where they went in the Ochco Mountains. But as they started heading towards the Ochco Mountains, the posse started getting closer and closer, was slowly but surely starting to catch up with them. So I don't know if you guys can see this. Let me see if I can get another screen here where you guys can see my mouse pointer. All right, let's look at this. All right, so I don't know if you guys can see this kind of faint line right here, but this is basically the path that they were riding as they were riding along the edge of these foothills. And then right down here is the Ochco. Oh man, all right, I told you guys you were gonna have to bear with me, so looks like we lost sound. So can somebody give me a comment and tell me how far back in the story we lost sound, and I'll see if I can pick you back up. Sound back? Yes, okay, sound's back, good. All right, somebody has to tell me what point in the story I was. Back to Ochco. All right, I lost sound at the Ochocos. Well, there was quite a bit about the Ochocos, so man, you guys missed the best part of the story. So anyway, so I'm thinking maybe I'll pick back up after the guys left the bank. They had robbed the bank in Dayville. They blasted up out of Dayville. Remember, 6 guys on horseback with the posse hot on their heels. So they kept going east and they headed towards the Ochco Mountains. And basically what happened was they headed up into the Ochco Mountains. And up inside the Ochco Mountains, especially that east slope of the Ochcos, when they get to there, that country's really, really steep. So up on that steep east slope of the Ochco Mountains, they headed up roughly following this road right here. They headed up into the Ochco Mountains. And once they started getting into this area right in here, the country started getting to be really steep. And you can kind of see when I zoom in here, there's all kinds of creeks and all of these contour lines are really close together. This is obviously really steep country in here. So the good news for the bandits is, or the outlaws is, that once they got into the steep breaks on these east, kind of northeast slopes of the Ochco Mountains here, they eventually lost the posse in here. So somewhere up here, they would have crossed up into the divide of the Ochcos. This is kind of the crest of the Ochcos up here. And right here is where the story, for the most part, would just indicate that they probably got off scot-free. The posse eventually gave up, rode back to Dayville, Canyon City, and John Day, where they all came from. And no one in this side of the country ever saw any of the gold, any of the loot that was stolen from the bank, any of the notes, anything like that ever again. So the assumption would be that this group of 6 outlaws, once they made it into the Ochco National Forest, if they knew the country well, they would have been able to follow the Ochco National Forest. They would have continued to follow it, going west until they would have eventually dropped out near maybe Ashwood or Shannaco, followed on up to, like, say, the Dalles, Oregon, followed the Columbia River on west, and then dropped down into the Willamette Valley and headed off on their merry way to live their lives with their stolen gold. The problem with that is there was never any record of any of this gold or cash ever resurfacing anywhere. So now keep in mind, this is in about 1863, 1864, somewhere right in there when this happened, right? So from the point in 1864 on, there's really, this story dies there, and it kind of dies based on the assumption that these guys made it off somewhere with all of this gold and all this loot. The only thing that makes that doubtful is, again, none of this loot, none of this gold ever surfaces anyplace again. So so nothing happens with this story for a long time until about 1920 something. And then a really interesting thing happens in around 1920, and I'm going to show you guys something here. Around 1920, there's still people prospecting up in the Ochoco's. In fact, there's I'm going to show you guys a place up in the Ochoco's called Prospect Spring. See if we can find that right here real quick. I'm looking on the map. Might as well bring you guys along so you can see the map too. All right. So look at this right here. So here's a place in the Ochoco's called Prospect Spring, right? And you guys see that? I'm circling my pointer around. Now let's go due east of that. And then you see right here, there's a place called Bandit Spring. So Bandit Spring was named because this is roughly in the area where those bandits lost the posse and last disappeared. This is right up in the divide of the Ochoco's. Now, there's a couple of important pieces of information to keep in mind right here. Number one, this highway that you're seeing going through here right now did not exist then. This was not the route that they took back and forth over the Ochoco's. In fact, this route didn't exist until much later, until I think in the 50s or the 60s. Prior to that, this over here was the route that they took to cross the Ochoco's from Primeville to Mitchell, or all the way over here to the west. So this area has got some modern roads in it now, but it didn't then. So here's what happened is around about 1920 or so, maybe it was a few years after that, a prospector up in this area who again was looking for another gold strike up there stumbles across a really, really interesting thing. This is, to me, is one of the truly fascinating things about this story. So I'm going to show you guys this right here. So this group of horse skeletons was found in about 1920. Now look at that picture. So there's 6 skulls of horses. And so there's basically the skeletons of 6 horses. And look at that log in the background of that picture. See all those divots gnawed out of that log? So those 6 horses had been tied to that log and basically left there to starve. And we know this because when this prospector found this, he didn't disturb any of this stuff. He thought it was really interesting, and at the time, he didn't know anything about the story of this lost gold, right? He just thought it was a really interesting sight, the fact that there were these 6 horse skeletons there and remnants of all the rotting tack, the saddles, the bridles, all of those things that were on these 6 horses. Well, here's the interesting thing is that there happened to be 6 riders in that robbery, which at this point would have been about, 50 years before this, 50 or 60 years before these skeletons were found was when that robbery took place. Out here in this dry country, that's plenty, that's not too long for these bones to have lasted there, or some remnants of them to have lasted there. So pretty interesting story. So what that brings back, or what that makes a person think, or what was surmised, was that these were the 6 horses of those burglars, and that maybe, just maybe, what happened was that posse was a lot closer to those bandits than they even realized at the time. So the posse thought that they were a long ways behind the bandits, but at all outward appearances, they maybe weren't as far behind the bandits as they thought. So one possibility, one really strong possibility, is that the bandits had worn out their horses. Their horses were exhausted and beat. They'd been riding uphill. They'd been riding them hard for probably almost 24 hours at this point. The horses were worn out. So one thought is that the bandits grabbed the gold, took off on foot, ditched the gold somewhere because they wouldn't have been able to carry it far, and then somehow ran off. Now, here's the other piece of the story that's kind of interesting. None of those 6 men were ever caught or ever heard of again either. So that further indicates that maybe something could have happened to them up there in that forest too. So there's a couple of possibilities. One is that maybe the posse did catch up to them, and maybe the posse did away with those guys and took that gold. We don't think that's much of a possibility because all the men that were in the posse were locals. People knew them, and somebody would have noticed had they got to the point where they started spending a lot of money. So the most popular theory about this is that those bandits took off on foot with all their bags of gold and stashed them somewhere in the immediate vicinity up there. So I've got some pretty good information. I think I've got some other a little bit more detailed information about all of this, and some good locations to help me kind of narrow down my search and give me a place to be able to start looking up there. So the first thing that I'd really like to find is I'd like to find where this log is, where this place is that these horses were. Now, keep in mind, this was found in 1920. Rumor has it that at least for a few years after that, there were still remnants of these horses and tack and stuff that could be found there. Having said that, I don't know whether or not anyone has ever metal detected the site, but what I'd like to do is head up in there with my metal detector, see if maybe I can find an old piece of a buckle or something like that off of the saddle. I think it'd be really interesting even if I could just find this site right here where all these skeletons were found. So that's going to be one of my projects. And that's the legend of lost gold. And all right, I got a couple of guys who want to see that map again now that they've seen the story. So, all right, so here's the deal. We'll make this a joint effort. I'm probably crazy for doing this, but I'm going to show you guys a little bit more map detail about where I'm thinking. So here's something you guys will be able to find. This is Ochiko Divide. So this is Highway 26 up in the Ochiko Mountains. Right here, there's kind of a rest area there and everything. And then just back from that is Bandit Spring, right there. And then right over here, you have Prospect Spring. So here's what I will tell you guys without going into too much detail. If you kind of triangulate off of those points right there, it's logical to conclude that this whole event happened somewhere in here. However, there's a couple of interesting little twists that I think open up some possibilities that may not be exactly right here. One is that there's some of the stories talk about something that's called Burglar Flat that used to be called Dry Moccasin Prairie or Moccasin Prairie. So, and another description says that where these horse skeletons were found is just below some place called Viewpoint. So right up in here in the Ochikos, there's actually quite a number of places where you've got a view and you can see a long ways out off the east side of the mountains. Let's see if we can actually switch to a satellite image here. Look at a satellite with labels. Okay, so now you guys are looking at the same area, only you're looking at the satellite image of it. You can see that Ochiko Divide campground. We scroll out here a little bit, and you can see this is high up in the Ochiko Mountains up in here. Look over here, you see the Mill Creek Wilderness area. Zoom in a little bit, and you can start to see that there's up around this Ochiko Divide campground in this area up here. Here's that Prospect Spring over here. You can see there's a lot of kind of flat areas, meadows in here. So somewhere in this general area in here is going to be a good place to kind of start looking. So let's see. You guys probably don't want to see that. All right. So I thought real quick, how are we doing on time? Oh yeah, we got a little bit of time. So I thought real quick, I just happen to have a book, and I know some of you guys have this book too. This is called Central Oregon Place Names. And this book actually has a pretty decent little write-up on this. So I thought I would just read this to you really quick for those of you that don't have this book. So this book says, in a little glade high near the summit of the Blue Mountains, which is what they used to call the Ochco Mountains, lie the skeletons of 6 horses, which many years ago starved to death while tied to a log where their riders had left them. Oregon has some fascinating history which has been given to the world, but there are narratives which hitherto have never been published, and which are especially interesting as the journeys of the Lewis and Clark, and which are equally interesting as the journeys of Lewis and Clark, Whitman, and the pioneers who braved the dangers of the hitherto unknown West. The tragedy of the horses left to struggle against hunger and thirst until death ended their suffering is an incident which is closely allied to the discovery of the rich placer ground in the Canyon City vicinity. According to some of the old-timers of Central Oregon, the gold camp at Canyon City attracted many of the class of men who sought to prey upon those who had been fortunate in their search for gold. In 1863, so goes the story, a group of men staged a robbery of a number of sluice boxes, obtaining a large amount of gold, which they loaded on their horses and made their escape. Going down the John Day River, the gang stopped long enough to rob the bank at Dayville and took to the mountains to elude pursuit. They traveled over through the Antone and Mitchell country and up into what is now the Ochco National Forest, stopping at a spot which is known as Burglar's Flat, about 10 miles east of the present Divide Ranger Station. Now, this says present Divide Ranger Station, but keep in mind this was written in 1929, so, or thereabout. So that was the present Divide Ranger Station then. No one knew what caused the robbers to become frightened to such an extent that they took out on foot, hastily leaving the string of horses tied to trees. But the fact remains that they did not return, neither were the animals by the men who neither were the animals found by the men who undoubtedly were following the criminals. Years passed until one day a prospector entered the glade and discovered the mute evidence of the tragedy which had fallen the helpless animals. The skeletons of the horses lay just as they had fallen when, owing to hunger and thirst, they had become too weak to stand. In front of the skeletons was a small log which the famished animals had scalloped out in their efforts to allay their hunger. So the horses actually started gnawing on the wood of the log as they were starving to death. Before their hasty departure, the robbers are supposed to have buried the gold, and in the vicinity of this place where the skeletons were found may be seen excavations made by men who have sought the cache. So it's interesting that at this time, this article was written shortly after that guy discovered the horses, right? Well, once the word got out that guy had discovered the horses, people started putting the 2 and 2 together and tying it to this lost gold. So some other people started searching for it. So let's see. Forest rangers and visitors on their way to Viewpoint and other parts of the north sections of the Ochco Forest have not disturbed the skeletons or the log, which still can be seen by anyone who cares to make the trip. Leaving Prineville, one travels east on the Ochco Highway 10 miles to Mill Creek, up which is a good graveled forest road will be found. About 10 miles up Mill Creek, Steen's Pillar, a stone column which rises a sheer 200 feet and which has never been scaled, will be passed in plain sight of the road. Arriving at Wildcat Forest Camp, the road forks. Take the left-hand road and proceed over the divide where the road again forks. The right-hand turn will bring the traveler to the place he is seeking. Much beautiful scenery will greet the eye as the car winds through forest and glade. Cold springs are on every hand. So there's numerous accounts of this and different variations of it, but I thought it might be kind of fun to read you guys that one and kind of take you get to see that it's in print somewhere, so you don't necessarily have to just take my word for it. So that's pretty cool. All right. So that was kind of the thing that I wanted to share with you guys today. And I've got a couple of show and tell items. And like I said, this is kind of new, trying the streaming software. So I didn't want to make it too complicated or too long. But just going to take a minute here to breeze through the comments and see what we have going on here. I'm going to go back and look. I saw a couple of super chats come through. What's happening is there's a little bit of a delay. So I'm seeing things, I think, just a little bit later coming through here. So I'm going to go back and glance at the super chats and see if anybody had any questions. So still here. Awesome. All right. Well, I got a super chat from still here saying no audio. Josh Rue, no audio. I appreciate that, you guys. Oh, yeah. Looks like maybe I need to drop my audio more often. It looks like I got a lot of super chats based on the fact that I didn't have any audio going. All right. Okay. So any questions about that story? Anybody want to come out and join the search for it? Oh man, DJ Hobbies Overland said he's trying to do the super chat, but it's not working for him. No worries, my friend. No worries, my friend. So that was kind of the story. I think one thing that's really interesting is about stories like that is I always think it's interesting to think about things in context of the technology and everything that was available at the time. So like I think about the fact that when these guys first set out to rob all those prospectors, the word of mouth could only travel as fast as horses and or people, right? So as long as the robbers were moving faster than everyone else or staying ahead, there was no like phones or any way to get word ahead at that point. There weren't telegraph lines run through a lot of that country or anything. So it's interesting. The guys had a pretty good strategy. They did kind of a blitz where they robbed a handful. Oh, awesome, you guys. Melissa, thank you. Awesome. Appreciate that. FatMat, bring back the mullet fund. Awesome, man. So they had a pretty good strategy, the strategy of blitzing through the mining camps and robbing a bunch of the, Doug Carr, thank you, my friend, and robbing a bunch of the sluice boxes in really rapid succession. And so, I think what another strategy Craig, thank you, my friend, I appreciate that. I think another strategy that a lot of the robbers in the time employed was they would ride in, they would hit one thing, and then they would ride away, right? And then they would go out in the hills and hide out and come back in. But these guys, I think, they had a pretty comprehensive plan. And I think the reason why, so they robbed these sluice boxes, and I think their plan was to get enough of a nest egg. They wanted to make enough of a robbery that they could get out of the country and be good to go. They wanted enough money so they could jet out of there and probably get out of the game. It was kind of a one and done plan for them. And what happened was, at least this is my theory, is what happened is they robbed those sluice boxes and they got a decent amount of gold, but it wasn't enough. So they beelined it. They got out of the gold camps in Canyon City and they beelined it a couple of dozen miles to Dayville, where they knew there was a bank, where they knew there would be a lot of deposits of gold, right? So they beelined for Dayville. They busted the bank in Dayville, and again, they got back on their horses and they continued just riding hard. So it was a very good strategy, but what was brilliant about that strategy might have ultimately also been their undoing. That could have been what rode their horses to the point of exhaustion where they couldn't utilize them anymore. Now, there is another theory out there that I read somewhere along the way, which is that they may have had another change of horses up in the Ochocos. And so what they did is they tied off one group of horses, jumped on the other group, and rode off. I don't think that's highly likely for a couple of reasons. Number one, you know, that was a lot back in those days, all that tack, the bridles and everything, you know, it wouldn't make a lot of sense just to tie the horses up and leave all that tack on them on the logs. At very least, most people back then respected animals enough because they were a tool that they would have just stripped the saddles off of them and let them run wild out there in the forest. So I don't know about that one. I guess it's a possibility, but I'm not real sure about it. Curious what you guys think out there. So all right, let's see. Bad plan not to have the fresh horses. Yep, that's true. That could have been their big failing. Yeah, Oregon Mike brings up a good point too, that it does take time to clean up a sluice box. It's not like you can just, you know, grab a fistful of gold. It does take a little bit of time to clean that out of there. So, you know, I don't know if they actually did that themselves or if they held the people at gunpoint and made them do it, or maybe they even kind of watched people and waited for them to get their sluice box cleaned out. I just think it's pretty incredible that they actually found the skeletons and they found the remains of those horses all that time later. All right. Well, let's see. I don't see a lot of questions about that. So how about what do you guys want? What do you guys want next? Should we do some show and tell? Let's see. Oh, yeah, George from Southwest Idaho overlanding. Oh, by the way, I want to thank you guys, too. I did, what finally clued me in that I didn't have any audio was you guys texting me. A couple of you guys texted me. George, Southwest Idaho, Mike Davis, Travis Hudson, Dirt Bandit Outdoors, did an Instagram call. So I actually looked down and saw my phone was blowing up, and that's what clued me in that my audio wasn't going good. So in being consistent with the theme of that story, so one of my pieces of show and tell tonight, one of my 2A pieces is another old gun, and this is actually an old gun that another one that's been in the family collection for a long time. This is an old high standard 22 revolver. Old school cowboy gun right there. Show you guys here. Yeah, I don't even know how old this gun is, but it's been around for a long time. It's actually in a little bit of a state of disrepair. It's missing the ejector here. So basically what you have to do is pop the cylinder out in order to eject all the spent cartridges out of it. But this is an old high standard single shot 22. Pretty similar to what back in the early 1900s. Actually a decent number of old homesteaders might have had one of these around the ranch for shooting rats and things like that and small game. So I thought I'd show you guys that. So that is one. The second thing that I wanted to show you guys for show and tell is a couple of, you know, I grew up with a lot of open country around and got to spend a lot of time like running around back in the hills with a shotgun playing around and stuff. And one of the things I always really liked was an old single shot shotgun. So a couple of the other show and tells that I wanted to show you guys is one of my favorite just for kicking around in the brush. This is a 20 gauge shotgun right here, and this one actually folds up nice and compact. But this is just a great gun, especially if you're trying to feed yourself with it, do any hunting of small game or anything like that. This one happens to, you break open the barrel by just pulling the trigger guard back. But it's nice and light. It's actually a decent little gun. This one's a 20 gauge, but it makes a very handy gun. This is a good one too to just throw in the truck. And the thing is they're just not that they're not that expensive either, so they're things that you can just have kicking around in the pickup truck or whatever. This one I actually spray painted. I don't know if you guys can see that. Really classy paint job on it. Oh yeah, Travis, thank you. That's true. So this is a, I don't even know what brand this one is, but I actually picked this up a while back at Prepper Up from my buddy Todd Stone down there. So this is a little bit newer one, right? And this one came, this barrel length. What I like is I like about a, 18 and a half, 19-inch barrel, somewhere in there. This one came with this length of barrel, and I think it's a modified choke. But let me show you guys one. This one I actually took an old shotgun. This one I actually built myself. I think there's a video on my YouTube channel of it actually. Look at that. So you guys know, empty. So this one started out life as a, again, I don't even remember what brand this is, but I can't quite see on there, but this is a really old one. This one actually I think was made back in the 1930s or something like that, 30s or 40s. This one's been around for a long time, and I just actually cut down the barrel myself on this. So you just got to keep in mind, you got to keep the overall length and everything within reason. So this barrel is actually about 20 inches long, but it just makes a nice and light. These are just good, fun little nice and light guns to carry around in the woods. So enjoy those. And then a couple other little things I wanted to show you guys are just things that I picked up recently. They're little pieces of kit that I always have, that I have a lot of. Oh, Mark, thank you, my friend. Let's see. Yeah, I definitely want to get a search party going to look for the loot, man. I think the more the merrier, man. Let's go up there and cover some ground. That's what I'm thinking. Couple of items. These are just a few things that, like I said, these are things that I've used for a long time. I just consider them really staple pieces of kind of survival gear. One is this bank line right here. This is the heavier kind of bank line, but if you look for tarred line, a lot of times it's called tarred line, tarred bank line, like T-A-R-R-E-D, tarred. This is really good stuff. I like it. It's not quite as strong as paracord. I think it's like 280 or 300 and some pound test, something like that. So it's not quite 550, but it's waxed. It ties knots really good, and it's just really good cordage to have in survival kits and rigs and things like that. It also works really well when it's wet because it's tarred a little bit or waxed. It holds knots really well, and so it's good for things like duck decoys and stuff like that too, but I just use it for nice survival cordage. And then the other thing are these wet fire tinders. I always keep a bunch of these tinders. I have them in like my vehicle kits and stuff, and then I always generally have a few of them in like my survival kits, my chest pack, my day packs, things like that too. They're just these little tiny single, each one of these is a single tinder bundle in there, and they'll take a spark from a ferro rod and get a fire going even when it's wet or anything. So all right, let's see, let me check my notes out here. I did want to tell you guys, I've had a couple of people ask about when's the next trip video coming out. So I actually got kind of sidetracked today trying to figure out a lot of the streaming software and everything, but I will I'll be working on that the rest of the evening, and hopefully sometime this week I will get that out. Let's see. Change that up a little bit. All right, guys, that's about all I have. So see if anybody has any questions or anything. I like Jason Perry says this is in relationship to the tinder. So I think he's saying that he's always just used pitch from some Douglas fir trees. Yeah, I mean, pitch is a nice thing. It's usually available out there in the woods. The only downside to pitch is it's not always the easiest thing to get to take a spark, like from a ferro rod or something like that. Alvin the Texan and Alvino, how are you, buddy? Good to see you, my friend. Yeah, I just saw Melissa said Oregon is cool and cloudy as usual. Isn't that the truth? Yeah, Fat Matt's asking. I don't think there is anybody from Lolo on. I haven't seen him on tonight. Josh Rue says Vaseline and cotton balls. Yep, I've used those. I've used those a lot over the years. Those work pretty good. All right, so Gary Macon asked the question. He said he has his father's old 12 gauge. How hard is it to cut the barrel down? It is not difficult at all. In fact, I mean, you can do it really, really low tech. Like I've done it before with like just a hacksaw. It's nice if you can create some kind of a guide to make sure that you get a nice straight cut. But even if it's a little bit crooked, then you can actually do some work with a file and get it nice and even. Like this one, I cut by hand, and I even put the bead on there by hand. So it's not difficult to do. In fact, I wouldn't, if you don't have a cutoff saw, like a grinding wheel cutoff saw type thing. If you don't have a metal saw like that, I wouldn't be afraid to use a hacksaw at all. In fact, most of these older shotguns too, like the steel's not extremely hard on them. Most of them won't, these older ones like this, most of them won't take like the 3-inch Magnum shells or anything like that, which is fine. Most people wouldn't want to shoot a 3-inch Magnum shell through a shotgun this small and light anyway. So yeah, no, I would say they're really easy to cut down. Not difficult at all. Oh yeah, FastEd58. I've always wondered about that. Says that he's used a rigid pipe cutter before, and I've always wondered if that would work. I've never done that. So Shankopotamus is asking, do I know what happened to the jackrabbits and sage grouse? Well, the jackrabbits are... So a couple of things with the jackrabbits. Number one, the jackrabbits cycle. So their populations get really thick certain years, and then they say it's about a 7-year cycle. So the jackrabbit population will grow and grow and grow for about 7 years, and then it finally grows to a point where the density of them is high enough that they start spreading some kind of a sickness or disease amongst each other, and they generally die off. They'll have a die-off. And then they'll kind of go through that cycle again. At least that's what the old timers have always said over the years. And I have noticed that to be the case, that they'll get thick, the populations will build up, and then they'll be minimal again. So I don't know if that's a hard winter or if it's disease, or maybe it's just the way that nature works, is every once in a while either disease or weather or something like that brings the populations back in check. So I still see years when there are plenty of jackrabbits. You usually don't realize how many of them are out there until at night. But a lot of times if you're out in the desert country around here, you may not see too many of them in the day. You'll kick them up every once in a while. But then you drive down one of those 2-track roads at night with your headlights on, and you will see jackrabbits running everywhere, and you'll realize how many of them there are. Now, there's records and stories and pictures of there being times back in the homestead years when there were jackrabbits really, really thick. Like, it appears as though thicker than they are now. In fact, they used to have jackrabbit drives where the whole communities would get together and they would line up and they would drive all the jackrabbits like down fences and try to kill them off out there, because there were literally so many jackrabbits. They were eating all of their gardens, all of their crops and things like that. So I don't know that I've ever seen in my lifetime that kind of thickness, but the other thing to keep in mind is when those homesteaders were first settling that country out there, it was after a period of above average precipitation years, right? So things were much greener. There was a lot more grass. There was a lot more forage. So I think a lot of animals like that, like the jackrabbits, their populations were exploding because of those abnormally wet years that was resulting in so much extra feed, so much extra resources for them on the ground there. So I feel like there was another half of that question that that maybe I forgot. The jackrabbit. Oh, the sage grouse was the other one. Yeah, the sage grouse. The prevailing theory on the sage grouse, and they're actually starting to come back. So, a prevailing theory on the sage grouse is that something to do with the grazing really changed the habitat out there and resulted in them dying off. Another piece of that may actually be a good part of it, but another piece of that is the sage grouse were really easy to hunt. They're slow moving ground birds for the most part. So I think a big part of that is keep in mind that the homesteaders out there, they homesteaded almost every section of land out in that country, and they were hungry. And in most cases, once that climate changed out there a little bit for them, they started hunting, relying on hunting, and they hunted everything they could possibly get a hold of. Just like in many places during the Great Depression, deer populations were almost completely annihilated. There's some places in the country where only just now are the deer populations starting to recover after the Depression, when so many people were harvesting deer just for sustenance, just for their basic survival. So there was a similar dynamic there with the sage grouse too. They were one of the few things around this country that out in the desert country, they were one of the few things there that could be hunted and eaten. Yeah, and there are getting to be quite a few of them back out here now. I don't know what's the weirdest thing that I've hunted and eaten. Well, I mean, pretty much. I mean, this might be a little bit of a surprise, but like when I was young, I would just go back and walk around in the mountains with my shotgun and go camping and stuff like that. Just out behind our property out in the BLM land back there. I've eaten on quite a number of occasions, quite a few robin. The robins is good-sized birds with the with the red breast. Not in years and years and years, but when I was young. So then TF Cooks is asking if I've ever used barrel adapters with these break action shotguns. I never have. So what he's talking about is they make these inserts that go inside the chamber of these kind of shotguns. And what those inserts do is they allow you to shoot things like 9mm caliber or different pistol calibers or even 22 caliber through this. So they're basically a cylinder, and they fit inside the chamber, and they're in essence a gun barrel that's just smaller and adapted to a bullet. It's an adapter to fit to fit a smaller size cartridge. And then so I never have really messed around with one of those. I've seen them before, but I've never shot a gun with them, and I've always kind of questioned how accurate you would be able to be with them. I guess has always been my question. Charlie J is asking, when do I plan on doing my next overland camping video? Well, I'm working on it right now. I'm hoping to get it finished in the next couple of days. Oh yeah, so Craig's in Kansas, and he's saying the jackrabbits are out there bad in his sunflower seeds or sunflower fields. Rich Patton asked the question, how much time does it usually take me to put together one of my weekend camping trip videos? And I like to say on average that I have about an hour of editing for every 1 minute of finished video. So my average, weekend camping trip video that I put out, let's just say, is about 30 minutes long. So that's generally speaking about 30 hours worth of editing that goes into that. And when I say 30 hours worth of editing, that's not just the editing, but that's just, like, keep in mind, I get back, I've got film that's on my main camera, like that sits up here behind me. Then I've got film on a GoPro, on a drone. I've got clips on my iPad, on my iPhone. So, like, it's just getting all those clips off there, pulling the SD cards, downloading them on my app, on my my laptop, putting all of that stuff into my editing software, sorting through the clips, deleting all the bad clips and everything, and then the actual editing of the video. So, there's usually a couple of hours tied up in just getting all the clips off of all of my cameras, getting them all onto my computer that I'm doing the editing on. So it's a good amount of time. It's generally, that's my biggest challenge is the filming and the trip is one thing that's pretty cool, but then, like, once my work week starts, I have a job that I have to go to every day too, so I'm editing in the evenings and stuff, and so it can take me a while. Odie Slim. Yeah, so Odie Slim's asking, how do I sync the videos from all of my cameras and everything? Yeah, I mean, that's basically my process is I pull them off of all the cameras, I download them all into one folder that's going to be my raw clip folder, so to speak, for that video, and then I just start assembling them in my timeline in my editing software, and sometimes I overlay some, sometimes I don't. I generally don't do a ton of overlaying. Usually I do fairly linear editing, and what I mean by that is I'll use one piece of one clip next to one piece of another clip next to one piece of another clip, as opposed to building a lot of layers deep where I'm using, like, the audio off of one clip and the video off of another clip and everything. So yeah, it's definitely takes some time, man. Jeeping with Jen and John. Yeah, hopefully, guys, you'll enjoy it. I think what I'm going to do with this stream is is I'll probably edit a little bit, see if I can find that part where the sound went out and just cut that all out of there, because it sounds like that was probably a little while. Charlie J says, wow, I need a better half to help me out with the editing. I know the tough thing is finding a better half that's actually good at editing too. No, Big John, no jackalope. I haven't run across a jackalope out there. However, there is a spot on that map that I was showing you guys that's called Jackalope Spring right out in that area. So I'm thinking that there probably is some jackalope in the area of that, right? That's got to be why that spring was named that. That's what I'm thinking. Let's see. Yeah, Jeeping with Jen and John. Anybody that has a YouTube channel knows that the editing is the biggest chore. Oh, Doug Carr said his mom saw a jackalope. Mike S is asking what metal detector do I use. So I have a Fisher F75. It's probably, God, I want to say it's almost 10 years old now, maybe like 8 years old. But I've been thinking about getting another one of these days. And I got a hunch I'm going to be getting out and doing a little bit more metal detecting coming up this year. Of course, now, with still so much snow and mud and everything out here, it's not really time yet. But yeah, so I use a Fisher F75. I think back when I bought it, it was like a $1,200. It's a F75, like, gold anniversary edition or something like that. It was kind of a special edition one. I want to say it was like around $1,000 or $1,200 when I got it. So it was a decent metal detector machine. Gary Makin's asking, what is my Monday through Friday job career field? Well, I'm basically in land use planning and long range planning. So, yeah, so I do like developments and, you know, comprehensive plans, different types of plans like parks plans and transportation plans and things like that for local governments. Yes, Oregon History Hunters. Yeah, I think that's what it is. The Fisher F75 limited edition. What binos do I keep in the Jeep? Well, I keep a set of Steiners. They're 10 by 50s, but they have the built-in compass that you can see inside the binoculars. I really like those, and then they're lighted too, so I can light the compass on the inside of them. I like those because I can look at something through the binoculars, and then I can take a bearing off of it, and then like if I'm talking to somebody else trying to tell them what I'm looking at, I can hand them the binoculars and say, you know, it's at 270 degrees or whatever, and they can find the thing that I'm. So Asa's asking, Asa Lee Meadows is asking, is it still legal to prospect for gold in Oregon? As far as I understand, it's completely legal as long as you're not prospecting on land that someone else already has claimed. Doug Carr's asking, what's my favorite truck gun? God, this is good, man. I like all these questions coming through. My favorite truck gun is probably, this is boring, but just a good old AR-15, like a 16-inch barrel AR-15 to me is like the perfect desert truck gun out there. The only other one that I vacillate back and forth sometimes is like a Remington 870, like 20-inch barrel length shotgun. I don't know. I've always really appreciated a shotgun too. The out in the desert country where it's so open, you know, an AR-15 is just a good rifle out there. In a perfect world, I would love to find a company that I can work with. I have a blueprint in my mind for the perfect kind of overland truck gun, and hopefully at some point I'll come together with a firearm manufacturer that, you know, similar to what I did with the Coyote Works survival knife with CK Knife and Tool. I was hoping maybe, you know, might end up being like Faxon Firearms. I don't know. I'd love to like maybe a Faxon, a Triarch Systems, Oregon Rifle Works, somebody like that. I would love to come up with or be able to have my perfect truck gun or overland rifle manufactured by someone. And the Coyote Works overland rifle. What loads do I run in the 870 while I'm in my Jeep? Usually like 6 shot. If I'm running like lead shot, that 6 shot I think is a good, decent all-around load for that. That's good for desert country and a variety of kind of stuff out there. Rich Patton, if I could only have one handgun. Man, I love this, the rapid fire questions. If I could only have one handgun, I'm going to say a Glock 17, full-size Glock, if I can only have one. I'm operating under the assumption that because you said handgun, it's for personal defense and concealment. So it'd be kind of a toss-up between a Glock 19X or a Glock 17. I really like my 19X. I really love the full-size grip and the little bit shorter barrel. So, but if it's the only handgun I can have, I might want that little bit extra barrel length of the Glock 17. Yeah, and DJ Hobbies in Overland says he loves his 1911. I love 1911s too, my friend, but at the end of the day, it's really, really hard to beat just for throw it in the dirt and keep on ticking reliability. It's really hard to beat a Glock, man. All right. Let's see, what else do we got here? I see another one for the Glock 19X, yeah. Yeah, Fat Matt likes the 1911 too. Jacqueline would go for a Glock 19 for sure. Jason Perry, the Glock 23. I think that's a 40 caliber, no? Doug Carr, Glock 34. A lot of Glock guys on there. 38 Super 1911. DJ Hobbies, yeah. The 43X is definitely cool. I like it. Craig Holmes got the Glock 29. SIG 365. Odie Slim's a wheelman. Ah, T. Caraway, good question. What is the next mod or addition to the Jeep? Oh man, I've just been thinking about this. The one thing I can feel like I continue to struggle with that thing is how to carry enough fuel for the trips that I want to make. So I'm thinking the next mod for it is probably going to be something. I just saw Travis Hudson got a really cool like swing out tire carrier that has a lot of capacity for extra fuel cans and stuff like that on it. So I'm thinking that's probably going to be the next thing that I get for the Jeep, is something that allows me to carry, gives me the capacity to carry some more cans of fuel easier. Oh, Mark Taniguchi with the H&K USP Expert 45. Man, that's a really nice gun. I actually had a H&K USP for years. I ended up giving it to a friend of mine, but that was I actually really liked that gun. Yeah, Asa saying the auxiliary fuel tank. And Jacqueline's asking, what's the next mod for the Vern truck? You know, I don't know that I'm actually going to do much more to the Vern truck. I think, some minor little things like it too. I'd like to have some good solid mounting inside the bed to carry some extra fuel cans. So I'll probably do that. Oh, I know one thing that I'm going to work on for both the Jeep and the truck is mounting for like my cameras and my tablets and navigation stuff on the interior. So some kind of like one of those JKU docks for my Jeep. And I'm not sure what, for the truck, but something so that I can rigidly mount like my my iPhone with my navigation software on it, mount a GoPro to the windshield, things like that. My name is Jeff is asking, does the truck have a winch? The truck doesn't have a winch, and I would like a winch and bumper, but let me tell you what my challenge with the truck is I feel like the truck is fairly underpowered. That LS motor that's in it, just especially, once I fill it up, or like now, once I put all of my kind of general recovery gear and my camping gear and stuff in it, it doesn't have a ton of power. So I'm not feeling like I really want to load it down much more. I'm thinking about, like at some point, do I do a motor swap out in it? Like, is there some other motor that, I mean, it's a GMC truck, so my guess is there's multiple different options for motors that are fairly compatible with it, or maybe even there's got to be some performance rebuilds for the LS motors out there. But anyway, I'm hesitant to put a lot more weight on it, i.e. steel bumpers and winches and things like that. It also doesn't get that great of gas mileage already, and I want to kind of use it for some of my longer trips where I'm putting in more miles on the highway. So again, I hesitate to load it down a lot more and just ruin that gas mileage. So if you guys have, have thoughts or what to do about that, I mean, I'm never going to get rid of that truck. It was my grandpa's truck, so I'm going to make do with it. But it's not the perfect vehicle for that. So I'm really kind of thinking about ultimately what to do with it. I do, want to keep it, but how do I want to modify it? I mean, I'd love to slap bumpers and winch and all kinds of stuff on it. I'd love to put a truck bed camper in it at some point. But again, I feel like it's a little underpowered maybe for that. So, but I don't know. It might need, maybe it just needs some better gearing, and that would probably help a bunch. Yeah, and Oregon Mike brings up a good point too, and that's kind of been my thought process, is the truck just needs traction boards and a snatch strap. So, maybe if my brother's up at Lolo Overland, have an extra set of traction boards laying around. I already have a snatch strap and stuff in it, but yeah. Yeah, Craig's saying the bottom end of that 5.3 is bulletproof, and I know that. I mean, it's a solid motor. TF Cooks is asking about made a comment about the Wrangler 4XE. Interesting, good range. Hopefully it will be reliable. And I think the verdict's still a little bit out on that. Oh God, I'd love to put a 454 in there still here. Oh, Mojave Mike has a great question. When do the ticks come out in Southeast Oregon? Well, about right now is when they start coming out. Right now we're at the very beginning of like the worst time of year for ticks. Usually we have this kind of 2-month window or so in the spring where they're really bad, and it's about the time that the temperature stops consistently being freezing. Once it starts to warm up a little bit is usually your first couple of bad tick months here. But just get permethrin is the thing for the ticks. So I run I think it's made by Sawyer. Yeah, I run the Sawyer permethrin, and basically what you do with the permethrin is you saturate your clothes and your boots and stuff with it this time of year. My name is Jeff, 440 baby, Mopar or no car. I like it, man. I like it. Jacqueline is asking if I sold the Harley yet. I did not sell it yet, but I really need to do that this spring. I'm kind of thinking maybe I sell the Harley and whatever I get out of the Harley, I get to put back into Grandpa's truck. DJ Hobby's a Duramax diesel swap. Man, I think that would be so cool. I'm really curious. I mean, even actually Chevy and GMC made some interesting diesels, but I think that would be a really fun thing to do, is potentially put a diesel in Grandpa's truck. See, if I did that, if I put a good solid powertrain in it, put a diesel motor in it, then like the sky's the limit. Then I wouldn't feel bad about really going in, doing, suspension upgrades, drivetrain upgrades, all that stuff, swapping out like HD axles and things like that. Like that would be pretty cool. Vaughn Miller, how's it going, my friend? Yeah, Ace is saying he gets great miles per gallon with the diesel JL. So yeah, DJ Hobbies is asking, is my truck a 1500? Yeah, it is a 1500, so it's just a half ton. Auction the Harley. Okay, Rich Pat, another great question. Of all the FSR tents I've had, which one has been the best for me? I really like the Evolution that I'm running now. Having said that, as far as the soft shells go, let's see if I have some pictures right in here. As far as the soft shells go, I'm going to show you guys something. Let's see if I have a good picture of... Okay, let's try this. See if this works here. All right, hopefully you guys, this will be popping up here in just a second, but this is the Evolution Series rooftop tent. This is the one that I'm running now. Really like it. Hard shell, really easy to set up. And not only is it really easy to set up, but I can put bedding inside of it. So to me, that's kind of the best of all worlds. The next best tent, which is significantly less expensive, is going to be that... is going to be the Odyssey series, and the Odyssey series hard shell. I really like that tent, really like the setup and everything and the comfort and everything of it, but it is a little, you can't fit very much bedding and gear inside it. And for me, I go so often I go in really cold winter weather that having that ability to be able to put really thick sleeping bags and stuff like that and keep them stowed up in my tent is pretty critical. So So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I really like the the Evolution series that I'm running now is probably my favorite. I see Spider Tech on here is asking, I think he's asking me if I lifted my new Jeep, or maybe he's asking someone else. My Jeep is lifted. I have a 2.5 inch AEV lift in it. It's that AEV. It's basically their Overland lift in it. So 2.5 inches. It actually ended up effectively lifting it about 3 inches though. So that's pretty good. TF Cooks is asking about the Gazelle tent. Awesome tent, man. I couldn't be happier with that thing. I just don't think you can beat it for the money. For less than $300 for a tent that size, that's built that well, that sets up that easy. Like, it's a no-brainer, man. If you're looking for an extra tent in that kind of 4-person range, yeah, I don't know. So my name is Jeff is asking, does the tent make my Jeep too heavy? The rooftop tent? Not so much the tent. I don't think the tent is actually that heavy. I honestly don't know what the weight is of that Evolution tent, but my guess is somewhere around maybe like 180 pounds or something like that. They're generally not exorbitantly heavy, and I run a really light rack. That Rhino rack with the Vortex bars is a really light system, so no, the tent itself doesn't add a lot of weight. It does add weight up high, and with a little bit of a lift, it does definitely makes the Jeep handle a little bit differently. Having said that, when I've got my full winter camping loadout in that thing, and the tent, and the winch, and the steel bumpers, and the heavy-duty tire carrier, and the oversized, 33.5-inch tires and stuff like that, I mean, I am definitely pushing the weight limit of that Jeep for sure. Selectable lockers for the pickup truck. Ole Johnson brought that up. That would definitely be a handy thing here. Burt Bell's asking, do I ever carry around a good old-fashioned Winchester lever action? Well, I actually do, my friend. In fact, I think I did a video not too long ago where I'm carrying around my old Winchester 92 in 25-20 caliber, but I've also got a 30-30, and I've actually been thinking about maybe picking up another lever too, a modern one. Okay, Venture Off-Road, put a LS in the Jeep. Oh, interesting. I might have to actually ask you more about that Venture Off-Road, because that's one thing I've been thinking about too, is with the Jeep, with my JK, at some point I'll kind of wear out that motor, and I've been thinking about that. I kind of like the idea of going with a little bit older technology, reliable motor. I kind of like the idea of a potential LS motor in there. And I bet the Jeep's light enough that the gas mileage wouldn't be too bad. Craig's asking if I put 410 gears in my Jeep. Yeah, I believe it's actually 411 gears are what came in it. The model that I have came with 411s. Yeah, DJ Obbies has a 9422 but wants a 94 3030. Oh, that would be awesome, man. I'd love to check yours out, Venture Off-Road. Yeah, Venture Off-Road saying I can test drive that. Man, I would love to test that thing out. And just kind of check it out and see how it all functions together. Yeah, the 392 Hemi is rumored. Yeah, so Venture Off-Road saying 18 miles a gallon with the LS swap in the Jeep. Yeah, Mike, I'm still thinking about Alvord meetup. I have a couple of critical date things that are kind of hanging out there for the spring that hopefully I'll have scheduled by the end of March. And unfortunately, until I get those two things lined out, I'm hesitant to really put anything else on the book. So those are kind of a couple of personal things I have to get taken care of, and I'm just kind of waiting for the dates to come through on them. But outside of that, I would love to do a big group meetup in the Alvord, and then I want to do a smaller group meetup. And I've got a couple of different private ranches lined up for a smaller group. I'm thinking like, that 20-25 rig trip. So I'm just hoping to, holy smokes, Jamie Hastings is saying that that Jeep 392 is going to start at about 77,000. God, that's crazy, huh? Alan Cass, that's an interesting idea. Brings up, how about a video show in my hometown? That would be interesting. It's actually kind of a cool little community here. All right, so real quick, guys, and then guys and gals. So once again, I want to thank you guys all for your contributions. I appreciate you kind of bearing with me the technological challenges of this new platform. Hopefully, I'm going to go back and watch the stream. Hopefully, this is going to work out okay, because I really like being able to switch back and forth to the maps and stuff like that. Really appreciate you guys with your super chat contributions, the direct contributions to my PayPal link down below, and your support with the stickers and the merchandise sales at Lolo. Man, you guys are awesome. That's really been a huge help. I know I say this every time, but I just want you guys to know how much I appreciate that. Really enjoy hanging out with you. I feel like maybe tonight it's not been my best presentation. It's actually kind of distracting. I have enough stuff going on with the new webcam, the microphone, and switching back and forth between the scenes and trying to track the comments and everything. The one thing I'm realizing about this setup is it's a little harder for me to just be in tune to the comments, as obviously evidenced by the fact that I missed the not having any audio there for a while. So I don't know, I might need to get another monitor set up so I can just keep the stream up that I'm watching there. Yeah, I don't know. So I still have a little bit of work to do. So I really appreciate you guys kind of being patient with the kind of the rough edges around this deal tonight, and really enjoyed hanging out with you guys. Daylight savings time, so I'm really excited about having a little bit more daylight to work with, and looking forward to getting some good trips in. It's been drying out around here, so hopefully starting next week we can start going out and finding some more cool. I feel like the last couple of trips I've gotten kind of waylaid as far as I haven't really been able to get to the historical sites that I wanted. But that should be all changing. It's starting to dry out now. So, yeah, man. Well, DJ Hobbies and Overland, thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. I don't necessarily... I guess that's a big thing. I know this is a little bit rough, and I hope you guys are enjoying it and appreciate the fact that you're sticking around while I work through some of this more challenging for me tech stuff. I tell you guys, I've spent literally hours this weekend trying to get all of this functioning right. And in spite of all that, Vaughn Miller, thank you. Really appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, it's awesome to see the comments. You guys looking forward to this, because that's how I feel, man. I'm looking forward to it. Actually, Friday night, getting off work, I started thinking about this live stream, and I had a lot of chores to do this weekend. It's that time of year, taxes, all of that kind of stuff, spring, yard, everything. And so, but I was looking forward to this. I like hanging out with you guys. So hopefully this format works all right. Please do. I didn't get a chance to see all the messages coming through. So shoot me direct messages on Instagram. Let me know how this worked. Do you want me to keep using this streaming software? Does it work well enough? Or do you want me to go back to just webcamming it? I can webcam it with a little bit better microphone and a little bit better camera. That just doesn't give me the ability to be able to show you guys the maps and stuff on the screens. And so I've got some more stuff. Craig, thank you, my friend. Really appreciate that. But that just doesn't give me the ability to show you the maps. And I want to tell you guys, you guys are like my core group on the channel, and so I'm going to start showing you a little bit more stuff on the maps and everything. You guys know that I usually don't share location stuff, but for those of you that are joining in on these live streams, that's a pretty small audience, and you guys have, for the most part, have been with me for a long time. You're really, really great people. I tell people all the time, man, how cool everybody is that's in my audience and watching my channel. So I like being able to pull up Gaia, show you guys some of the actual spots on the map, and hopefully between all of us together, we'll be able to find more of this cool stuff out there. So that's it, guys. Awesome. Doug, thank you. I see Doug left a comment in there. The new software is a good improvement. So good. I appreciate hearing that. So Brian Peterson, Campfire 52, Burt Bell, Mojave Mike, FatMat Adventures. God, I got to tell you too, FatMat, man, I really enjoyed the last video of yours that I watched. It was just a couple of days ago. I left you a comment on it, but I really enjoyed that, man. All right, Brad Doris is saying, keep using the software. Asa Lee Meadows. Hey, by the way, Asa, man, that was great visiting with you the other night. We had a Zoom call together and visited about all kind of stuff. Tucker, my man. Oh, I hope you're doing good, Tucker. I think that's my buddy Tucker. If you guys follow him on Instagram, I think he's going to help me out get my motorcycle all tuned up. So that's pretty cool. Dirt Bandit Outdoors, man. Enjoyed hanging out with you as well. Jackie, as always, appreciate your help. Mike S., give a huge shout out to Oregon Mike for doing the moderating on here. And Craig, man, really appreciate you. You guys are awesome. I think that's all for this one, guys. Until the next one, Coyote Works, out.